Hola. Buenos días. Bienvenidos a mi clase de español de hoy. Y hoy es una clase de gramática. Es una clase de gramática. It's a grammar class. And guys, I did promise that I would produce some grammar lessons to go with future study and work, the videos that I'm doing, and to support you with that. They will be kind of independent in the sense that I can't probably cover all the grammar that's in episode 1, for example, in one grammar video. There's more to it than that. So I'm simply going to call these videos, grammar number 1, grammar number 2, and so on, and just build up your knowledge of Spanish grammar, and particularly the verb forms in Spanish, which is difficult. But what I will do is use a lot of language from the topic area of future study and work when we do this to support you in learning about future study and work. Okay, so these grammar lessons are really, I've put a little picture of some Lego at the bottom here to show you that this is really about me teaching you about the structures of the language and the coding of the language and how the language fits together, which ultimately is going to really boost your understanding when you read, listen, speak or write Spanish. Okay, so there is a memorise set that I've started. It says RV Span FSW Grammar, Future Study and Work Grammar, and at the moment there are only a couple of levels in there. They are not very interesting in the sense it's a lot of repetition of the sort of, if you like, coding that I'm going to show you for the present tense of regular verbs in Spanish. So it's an opportunity for you to practice it and see if you can remember them. If you can, it's a huge help going forward in your studies. Anybody who's got any possible thoughts of doing A-level Spanish should probably definitely work hard at this area, in other words, working hard at the grammar side of things, because when you move forward with the language, you have to know this stuff really in order to progress. Okay, first things first, and going back to the sort of beginning and the basics of verbs, what I want to talk to you about is the fact firstly that there are three types of verb in Spanish. You've got AR verbs like trabajar, work, ER and IR verbs like beber and escribir, beber y escribir. So we've got the verbs work, drink, write, and trabajar is an AR verb, which is the largest group of verbs in Spanish, and beber and escribir are examples of the two smaller groups of verbs, ER and IR verbs. Okay, this form of the verb with the AR, ER and IR sort of on the end of that word is called the infinitive of the verb. You might want to think of it in terms of from this starting point, if you like. There are infinite number of possibilities as to what you can create from that. And as we will see, when you take that ending off, the AR, the ER and the IR, and you add different letters like an O, for example, it changes what you're saying. So if trabajar, for example, is just work or to work, the kind of main part of the verb, if you like, when you strip off that AR and you are left with the stem, it's called, see I put infinitive versus stem. So when you chop off your AR ending and are left with trabaj and you put an O ending on the end, that suddenly means I work or I am working in the present tense. So what we're looking at today is, or starting to look at, is this idea of changing the endings of verbs to change who is doing the action and to a degree when the action is taking place. So this infinitive form of the verb is what you find in a dictionary when you look up a verb. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean by that by going to wordreference.com. Here's the sort of logo, wordreference.com. Brilliant online Spanish dictionary. It's been going a long time, and it's brilliant because particularly if you're an advanced student of Spanish, you've got a lot of information in the forums on wordreference.com where native speakers of Spanish, and that could be people who live in Spain, it could be people who are in Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Chile, all of those Spanish-speaking countries, where these people have responded to questions from learners of Spanish, whether that's people living in England, America, I don't know, Japan, wherever, but learners of Spanish have asked in forums, how do you say X in Spanish? And the native speakers have responded and said, right, if you want to say X, this is how you do it in Spanish. So it's great for finding out how you say things, or how a proper Spanish-speaking person would say things. In addition, it is a great standard dictionary as well. Let's have a very quick look at it because I don't want to get too bogged down. So what you do is you go to Google. In fact, let's go start at the beginning with it. So if you go to Google and you type in word reference, you'll see all the links come up underneath wordreference.com. We want Spanish English dictionary. In we go. And at this point, all I want to illustrate to you is that if I was to type in and just check that you've got this set right. So I want to type in an English verb and see what the Spanish equivalent is. So I'm in the right way round here. So I'm typing in English to get the Spanish. If you look at the drop down, you've also got an option to go to Spanish English, which is where, if for example you've got a Spanish word you don't know the meaning of, you type the Spanish word in here and it would give you the English translation. So let's just pick a verb. I would say let's pick something that is might be useful to us for this future study and work, and I'm going to go for aid, or sorry, help. Okay, help. That's a verb. You help, I help, you help, to help people. So if I just click return, and what I see coming up, and we mean help as in assist, that's the right meaning of the verb help, and it says the Spanish is ayudar, ayudar. And you might be reminded of an English word to aid, which means help, doesn't it? So the Spanish is ayudar. My main reason for showing you this, guys, is that you will see that, look, this is an AR verb. It's got AR on the end, and it's this form of the verb that you see, okay, rather than any other modified version. So ayudar, that tells us it's an AR verb. And if we go back to my PowerPoint here and just remind ourselves that there's three types of verb: AR, ER and IR verbs. AR are the main group, and this is what you find in the dictionary, this form of the verb, the infinitive, with the AR, ER or IR attached, as opposed to what we're going to see now. So you will come across the expression in languages of conjugating a verb. To conjugate a verb, here it is. And if we think about the verb work, for example, work, on its own that doesn't really tell us much, does it? If we say work or to work, it doesn't tell us who's doing the action of working. It doesn't tell us when the action's taking place. Are we referring to something that happened in the past, something that's going to happen in the future in terms of work, or around now, or right now? And I want to show you how you conjugate a verb in the present tense. Okay, and what does present tense mean? Well, it means we're talking about actions that happen around now, currently. So things that are happening around now, or things that are happening right now. So an example would be of around now might be I work at a local school, for example. That's an example of the present tense It's an action that I am sort of currently engaged in nowish. Okay, I work at a local school. That doesn't mean, by the way, does it, that I'm actually there right now working, but it's something that is true of the current time for me. I work at a local school. Or I exercise 5 times a week. I exercise 5 times a week. So exercise is the verb. It's something that I'm doing that's true for me now, around now, isn't it? Something I'm doing currently. Therefore, it's an example of the present tense. Or I might refer to something I'm doing right now. So somebody calls me or FaceTimes me, and I'm in the middle of dinner, and I'll say, oh, I'm eating, as in I'm eating right now. Can I call you back, or whatever it is? So these are examples of the present tense. Okay, so it's what are we doing, or what am I doing now, around now. So to conjugate the verb in the present tense, what that means is that here's the verb down here, and it's all about how that verb changes depending on who is doing the action. So we say, don't we, in English, I work, you work, he, she, or it works, we work, you all, as in when we're talking about you and there's more than one person. So this you here is singular. So this is for when we're talking about just one person, you. You all, though, is different. Not here it isn't, but in Spanish it certainly changes. And then you've got they work. Okay, so imagine you're a student of English, you're a Spanish person and you're learning English, and you've been told your homework is to learn to conjugate the verb work in the present tense. You're probably going to be thinking, that's a really easy homework, because all I've got to remember is that in the he, she and it form of the verb, I've got to stick an S on the end. All the rest is the same. So in English, conjugating a lot of verbs is really very easy, okay, in the present tense. I work, you work, he works, or she works, or it works. So we have to remember the S on the end there. We work, you all work, they work. And the other thing to just point out at this stage is that when you, in the language learning world and in dictionaries, the conjugation is always listed in this order. I, you, he, she and it, we, you plural when the you that's being referred to refers to two or more people, and they. It's always in that order. And it's probably easier to think of it as two halves. Up here, I, you, he, she and it, if you ask yourself how many people are actually involved when we're talking in terms of I, you, he, she and it, the answer is just one person. So this is the singular people, if you like. How many people are involved down here? We, you all, and they. Well, we're talking about plural, aren't we? There's multiple people involved here. So you've got the top three are single, singular, bottom three are plural numbers of people. This, for example, is called the first person. I is called first person, and anybody who plays video games will know about the first person. A first person shooter, for example, is a video game where it's shot, if you like, from the point of view of the person that's playing the game. So you're holding the gun or whatever it is and you're shooting. So you are the person involved in the action. So first person singular, second person singular, third person is he, she and it. And these are the plural forms. So the first person plural is we, and so on. You don't really need to know that, guys, but you do need to try and remember the order generally is I, you, he, she and it, we, you all, and they. Okay? So English, conjugation, relatively straightforward. Now let's take a look at Spanish. So the verb work in Spanish, or to work, is trabajar. And all of a sudden it's a bit of a nightmare because unlike English, where all you have to worry about is bolting on an S to the end of the he or she form, everything changes all the way through in Spanish. And that explains something in Spanish, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But here's the Spanish equivalents of I, you, he, she, and it, we, you, all, and they. And it goes yo, I, tú, you, él, he, ella, she, nosotros, we, vosotros, you, plural, and ellos and ellas is they. Ellos is they for predominantly male group of people, they, and ellas would be if all of the people were female, ellas, when you're referring to they. Now, the other thing to notice about Spanish is that because these endings are all different and are all quite distinctive for whoever's doing the action, in Spanish they don't bother with using these words at all. They don't say yo trabajo, for example, they just say trabajo, because the Spanish ear will hear that O on the end and they will know that it's I, it's the I form. So you don't have to say yo trabajo. In the same way that you could say nosotros trabajamos, we work, we work. But the Spanish ear will hear that distinctive mos ending, trabajamos, and they know that that's the we form of the verb, so they dispense with the nosotros, the word for we, and it just becomes trabajamos. So if I wanted to say, for example, we work in a school, it would be, you could say nosotros trabajamos en un colegio. Colegio is a secondary school, but you can just say trabajamos en un colegio. Similarly, if I want to say I work in a supermarket, for example, un supermercado, supermercado, I could say yo trabajo en un supermercado. But I don't need the yo, I can just say trabajo en un supermercado. Okay, the Spanish will understand that. If I wanted to say they work hard, the adjective hard in Spanish is, in fact, it's the adjective for hard in the sense of knocking on a hard table, a hard surface, but it also, like we use it, it means difficult as well, as in hard. So if I wanted to say they work hard, I could say, for example, ellos trabajan duros. Okay, duros. But you don't need the they bit, the ellos or the ellas. Just say trabajan duros. Okay, so that's quite an important concept to get your head round. And again here, unless you really wanted to specify whether it's he or she works. So again, an example might be he works on Saturdays. Okay, Saturdays is sábados. On Saturdays, los sábados. Los sábados. So if I wanted to say he works on Saturdays, I could say él trabaja los sábados. Él trabaja los sábados. But I don't need the L unless I really need to specify that it's he, and in most of the cases it will be pretty obvious from the context of the conversation who I'm talking about. I can just say trabaja los sábados, and that A ending on its own, it's not trabajas, it's not trabajamos, it's not trabajan or trabajo. That we know that is the he, she form of the verb. It's enough. Okay. We've seen that trabajar, in this case, is what we call the infinitive of the verb. It's got the AR ending on it. It's the kind of main part of the verb, the starting part of the verb. And it's called the infinitive, and it's what you find in the dictionary. If we lop off the AR and we're left with trabaj, that is called the stem of the verb, and it's called the stem because that's the bit that you add stuff to. And we're back now with what we've just looked at. So here's our stem running through, trabaj, down here, and here's all the endings for the present tense of work, of trabajar. So yo trabajo, tú trabajas, as on the end. Él, ella trabaja, just the a now. Nosotros trabajamos. So it's what we're adding to this thing, the stem that we're looking at now. These are our endings. Trabajamos, amos ending. Vosotros trabajáis. We've got an A-I-S ending. And ellos or ellas trabajan. Okay? Now, this is quite a lot to remember, and it's not easy. So I'm going to give you, if you like, the minimum number of things to remember to help you to kind of get to grips with this. So actually, let's go back a step. Yeah. So I would suggest that you try and remember the el, ella form, because if you can remember this form of the verb, the he or she form, you don't need to remember too many other things to do everything else here. And at this stage, I'm going to tell you to forget the vosotros form of the verb, the you all form, because you will use it very rarely, particularly at GCSE, and it's very tricky to remember in my experience. So we're just going to focus on all of the rest of it. And here are the things you need to remember as a bare minimum. So try and remember trabaja, bearing in mind we are looking at an AR verb. So the he, she form, the el, ella form, has just got the A on the end. Okay, it's an AR verb. We sort of run with an A throughout, don't we? A, so you got as, a, amos, ais, an. So the A is the predominant vowel on the end. So remember trabaja, and then remember just three simple things. For the you form of verbs, nearly always you're going to see an S on the end. For we, you've got a mos thing happening. And for they, you've got an N ending. Okay, so I don't know how you're going to remember those three, but it's less to remember than doing it any other way. So S is for you, mos is for we, and N is for they. And if you then just bolt those endings onto your he, she bit here that I've highlighted, trabaja, that does it, doesn't it? So if you've remembered that S is the vowel on the end for when you are doing the action, you would have trabajas. So on goes the S to the end here, trabajas. If you remembered the mos ending for we, which is typical for we, then you would get trabajamos. Okay, so we're adding a mos ending to our he, she form. And if you remember N is typical for they, then you would remember that the they form is trabajan with the N on the end. The only other thing that you need to remember, which is important, because in the GCSE and generally in life, we all like to talk about ourselves a lot. And the I form of the verb in the present tense always ends with an O. And that doesn't matter whether it's an AR verb, an ER verb, or an IR verb. It always ends with an O. So that's not too many things to remember. 5 things, really. I ends with an O, if you see what I mean. Yo trabajo. The el, ella, the he, she form, which kind of links with the infinitive. So it's an AR verb, and therefore an A is what goes on the end here for the he or she form. And then we need to remember 3 more things, really. S is the you form, mos is for we, and N is for they. Okay? So you might need to rewind this video and go through this again, but hopefully that's reasonably clear. So just practice now if you like. So you could pause the video. How, from what I've just said, would these green verb forms of the verb hablar So it's spelt Hablar, hablar. Okay, it's an AR verb and it means to speak or speak. And here are the 6 forms of the verb in the present tense. How would you link those with the blue, well, with the people, if you like, down here, the I, you, he, she, we, you, all, they. So just see if you can do that. You don't have to write anything at this stage, but how would that work? Put me on pause, have a think, come back to me and we'll quickly look at the solution to that. Okay, so what you should have had is this. Yo hablo. O for the I person. Hablas. You've got an S on the end for you. El and ella, this is our start point, isn't it? Habla. Okay, it's an AR verb, I told you that. Therefore, the he, she form will end with an A, habla. And everything else can feed off from there. So I told you that mos is typical for the we form. So you get hablamos. I told you that N is a typical letter ending for they. Therefore, stick an N on the end of your, start point form habla, and it becomes hablan. Okay? And then this I've told you not to worry too much about, but the you all form, as it happened, would be hablais, and that is actually spelt incorrectly. The accent should be on the A. Okay. Just to let you know what resources are available to help you practice that. In the Grammar Memorise course that I've put together, level 1 is AR verbs regular, which is what we've been looking at today. And I've given you 2 verbs to play with and practice. One is trabajar, to work, and the other is buscar, to look for or to seek. Okay? And if you want to practice those endings, you can do that in Memorise, and I might try and put this in Quizlet as well. And for the time being, I've included what are known as the subject pronouns, is the posh word. I've included the I, you, he, she, we, you all, and they forms, because you do kind of need to be aware of them. But as I've said, you don't actually include them a lot of the time with Spanish, and the Spanish certainly don't. So there we go. You can practice the endings using that Memorise level 1 in the new course. So I said this was quite a long video, and it is. And what's pretty crucial is I'd like you to now use these verb forms and build up a bit more knowledge of language in general. So before we move forward with this, what I want you to do, and this will very much depend on how much experience of Spanish you've got already. Year 10s probably should cope with this reasonably well. Year 9s might, it depends. And you might also be able to make educated guesses around things as well, and I would encourage you to do that. So here are 12 phrases in English, all involving the verb work. And I now need to point out to you that when you say, for example, in fact, let's get this in front of us. So trabajar is to work or work. This is the infinitive part of the verb and the bit you'd find in the dictionary. Look, it's got the AR intact on the end. Trabajo is the I form. So if you want to say I work, it's trabajo or yo trabajo. Okay? But what I really need to sort of impress upon you now is that when you say trabajo, and in fact I'm just going to bring up on the bottom here, these are your subject pronouns. So you've got yo, which is I, tú, you, as in just one you, él and ella, so you've got él is he, ella she, and they can mean it as well. Nosotros is we. Vosotros is you plural form. So whenever you're when the you that is being referred to includes more than one person, it's vosotros. So you've got nosotros, vosotros, we, you, as in you all plural. And then finally, ellos and ellas, which is they. And it's ellos if it's, let's do it this way around. It would be if you've got a group of women or girls and you're referring to they, then it's ellas. For a group of boys or men or a mixed group, it's ellos. Okay, so ellos, ellas is they. Now, if I say in Spanish, yo trabajo, because that's what goes with that, isn't it? The I form, the I is yo, trabajo is the right ending to go with yo. If I say yo trabajo, what I'm saying is possibly two things. I could be saying I work, or I could be saying I am working. It's exactly the same in Spanish. Yo trabajo. So when we look at these phrases in English that I want you to translate, there is no difference between saying I work and I am working. There's no difference between saying he works and he is working. It's the same bit of Spanish. So for example, he is working will be trabaja, or él trabaja if you want to specify the he. Él is he. Él trabaja, he works. Or it can mean he is working. It's the same language. You do not need to include these if you don't want to, but it's maybe good practice to at this stage. So, what I'd like you to do is, I'm going to sort of get rid of some of this, just to clarify the first task. I want you to read the English phrases, and I'd like you to, and here, if you've got a pen, I'd like you to just write down a number and a letter matching up the orange, or each orange word or phrase with a English sentence or phrase that's up here. So if, for example, you think that I work, well, let's pick something a bit more obvious. And a good tip, by the way, is to do the ones that are obvious or easiest first. So she works hard, number 5, número 5. If you look at the selection of orange words I've given you here, if you remember, I told you that duro is the word for hard, as in difficult, or actually a hard surface or hard as rock, that type of meaning. But duro means hard as in difficult. So she works hard here. You would need duro. So for this exercise, I'd have liked you to have written 5L. That's the matching keyword that you would pick up there. So just pause me and just write 1 to 12 in a column in a piece of paper and see if you can match up the letter that goes with it. I will give you, well, as long as you need, pause me, come back, and we'll go through it together. Okay, so I work 3 days a week, number 1. Difficult, this one actually, but the words that went with it was por semana, because por semana is how you say per week or a week, and a semana is a week, and por here means per, if you like, per week. And you might know that if you want to say 3 days in Spanish, well, the word for days is días. Think buenos días, which means good days, literally. So when you say buenos días to somebody in the street in Spain, what you're saying is good days. We say, well, we don't say good day because it's very old-fashioned. But buenos días is good days. So días, days, 3 días, 3 days. I work 3 days a week would be. In fact, let me just bring this up. Ooh. Yeah, so it would be yo trabajo 3 días por semana. So por semana, M links with number 1. So I work at a school, and in fact, guys, what I'm going to do before we go on to completing these sentences, I'm going to talk around it with you, and then I might leave you to do this in your own time and correct it. So I work at a school. Number 2, número 2, is the word for a school in Spanish, which is, or in a school, en un colegio. Here it is, J. So 2 goes with J. En un colegio, in a secondary school. Colegio is a secondary school. And you can shorten that as well to just cole in Spanish. So C-O-L-E, cole. The full word is colegio, like college, except it's a secondary school, not a college. And so colegio or cole, secondary school. Next, número tres, number 3. I work as a waiter or a waitress. The word for a waiter or a waitress is H. So 3H. Camarero, camarera, with an A on the end if it's a waitress and it's female. Okay, camarero for a boy waiter, camarera for a girl waitress. Camarero. So 3 goes with H. He works in a shop. The key word here was shop. E. Una tienda. Okay, tienda, shop. So 4E go together. 5, she works hard. We did that one. Is number 5. 5 goes with L. Duro. Duro, hard. They work part-time. So number 6 goes with a tiempo parcial. So a tiempo parcial, tiempo, time, parcial, partial. That's how the Spanish say part-time. A tiempo parcial. That goes with número 6, number 6. 6I. You will know these if you've completed, by the way, episodio 1, number 1 episode of Future Study and Work. Number 7, I am working as a shop assistant. So the word you needed here, number 7, was F, dependiente. Think about, so a dependiente is a shop assistant or a sales assistant. And maybe the way to remember that is to think that when you're in a shop, you're dependent on the sales assistant to help you or something like that. I'm working in an office. Okay, so you needed B. So 8B, una oficina, or you can use un despacho for an office. They both mean an office. Una oficina, un despacho. I am working until 5 o'clock. Número 9, number 9, is hasta las 5, where hasta is until or up to. Is another sort of translation of hasta. So hasta las 5. Las 5 is 5 o'clock. Hasta, until. When I say to you, for instance, guys, hasta luego, luego means then. So when I say hasta luego, it means until then, quite literally. Hasta luego. So hasta is until. Hasta. He is working in London. Okay, you needed en Londres. A. En Londres. So here I'm just reminding you that there is a special word for London in Spanish, and it is the word Londres. Londres. We are working from home. So you might well have got from home as K, desde la casa. Desde la casa. Where desde is one word for from. We've also seen de, de, but for reasons I'm not going to go into now, because I might do a little section on this in the next grammar video. Desde is also from, but in a particular sense. So desde la casa, from home. La casa is the house, literally, but it can also mean the idea of at home or from home. La casa. La casa. Finally, they are working in a team. So número 12, number 12, goes with D, en equipo, where equipo is team, and it means football team, team as in team in a workplace. In a very general sense, team is equipo, and literally this means in team, doesn't it? Or we would say in a team. So at this stage, I'm going to do a couple of these with you, and then I'm going to probably leave you to have a go at this. But if we just practice using the right form of the verb, don't write anything down at this stage. I work at a school is going to be, so you would need to perhaps select the right subject pronoun from the bottom here for I. Then you'd need to select the I form of the verb to work down here. And then you'll need to say at a school. And how do we do that in Spanish? So, I work at a school will be yo trabajo en un colegio. Yo, I, trabajo, the I form of the verb with the O on the end. J en un colegio. Okay? I work as a waiter or waitress is going to be, so I work again, yo trabajo, and then the word for as in this sense is como, C-O-M-O, como. So yo trabajo como, and what was the word for a waiter or waitress? This, H. Camarero for a boy, camarera for a girl. So camarero is waiter, camarera is waitress. So it'll be yo trabajo como camarero. Okay? Now, before I let you do the rest of them on your own, just to be clear that saying I work in Spanish is exactly the same as saying I am working. So just skipping to number 7, for example, I am working as a shop assistant. It's exactly the same. It's yo trabajo as, do you remember, we've just looked at that, is como. Yo trabajo como, and a shop assistant down here, do you remember, you're dependent on the shop assistant to help you, is dependiente. So I am working as a shop assistant is yo trabajo como dependiente. Okay, exactly the same as if I want to say I work as a shop assistant. It's the same Spanish. And last little thing on this is, again, just to remind you that you do not need these pink subject pronouns in Spanish. I could just say, for I am working as a shop assistant, trabajo como dependiente. Three words, that's all you need in Spanish. Trabajo como dependiente. Okay, so it's very economical Spanish in terms of the word count compared with English sometimes. So I'm going to give you the opportunity, and I did say this was quite a long video, and hopefully if you're finding it a bit much, you've had a little bit of a break halfway through. But now I'm going to invite you to use the language on this slide to pause everything and see if you can write these English phrases out in Spanish using the correct form of the verb here. Okay? And just one last reminder then that it goes I, you, he, she, it, we, you, all, plural, although I don't think I've got any examples of that here, and they. So you need to select the right form of the verb to work from here. I would actually use these for this exercise to get used to them, where you've got yo, I, tú, you, one person, él, he, ella, she, nosotros, we, vosotros, you, all, ellos, ellas is they. Okay, so see if you can accurately write those 12 phrases down. The first one we've actually got up here already. Put me on pause, come back, and check at your leisure. Okay, so I work at a school should look like this. Yo trabajo en un colegio. Yo trabajo en un colegio. Or just trabajo en un colegio. You don't need the yo. I work as a waiter / waitress will look like this. Yo trabajo como camarero, or camarera if you're a girl, with an A on the end of this word. Yo trabajo como camarera, where como means as. And notice that in Spanish, they don't say I work as a waitress or waiter. It's just I work as waiter. In the same way that if you want to talk about your future plans and you want to say I want to be a doctor in Spanish, it is literally translates as I want to be doctor. They don't put the in for some reason. So I want to be doctor, I want to be engineer, I work as engineer. So it's a slight difference in the two languages. Next, he works in a shop would be él trabaja en una tienda. Do you remember trabaja? This one here is your starting point one. It's the he, she, or it form. It's got an A on the end, bearing in mind it's an AR verb. And that's the one where you add the three endings that I've mentioned. The S for you, the mos for we, and the N for they. She works hard. Ella trabaja dura. I'd be very surprised if anybody remembered to change duro to dura here, but if you've been following my other course for Self, Family and Friends, I've spent a lot of time talking about how adjectives, and duro is an adjective, it means hard, or yes, hard, have to agree with the gender of the thing that they're describing. And here we are talking about she. She works hard, so it's not duro but dura, because the thing that's working hard is a she, a feminine thing. They work part-time. Ellos trabajan a tiempo parcial. Trabajan for they. Okay, en ending. There it is. Trabajan, they. I'm working as a shop assistant. Yo trabajo como dependiente. And again, they don't say as a shop assistant. It's just I work as shop assistant. Yo trabajo como dependiente. I am working in an office. Yo trabajo en una oficina, or un despacho is the other word for an office. I'm working until 5 o'clock. Yo trabajo hasta las 5. You remember I said hasta luego when for until then, where hasta is until. Yo trabajo hasta las 5. Okay? He's working in London. Él trabaja en Londres. Él trabaja en Londres. We're working from home. We are working is going to be. Nosotros, we, trabajamos, are working or work desde la casa, from the house, literally is what you're saying there, from the house, desde la casa. And they are working in a team. Ellos trabajan en equipo. If you were talking about they and it was exclusively a group of women or girls, then that ellos would become ellas down here, okay? Ellas trabajan en equipo. They are working in a team. And that's it for today. Just to remind you that all these subject pronouns, the yos, the el, the nosotros, and so on, you don't need them, okay? You can just say trabajo 3 días por semana, or you could say trabajamos desde la casa. You don't need the word for we, nosotros, but it's as well to be aware of them. You don't need ellos here for they. You can just say trabajan en equipo. So that's it for today. Muchas gracias y hasta luego. Hasta la próxima vez. Until the next time. Adios.